One of the most defining moments for EMIYA, and one that showed just how truly skilled he is the fight that he had against Heracles in the Fate route. In the scene, you have us trying to escape him, and EMIYA stands in front of us and says that he's gonna be the one to hold it down while we make a run for it. But what we find out later is that not only did EMIYA hold Heracles back, but he was able to take him down 6 times in a row. He took 6 of Heracles' lives before Heracles was finally able to get him down. Unfortunately, in this scene, Nasu hit us with the ultimate blue ball, so we never actually got to see the fight because all of it was held off screen. The closest that we've gotten to this is the filler content that's in Dean's adaptation. So that's what we're going to get into. I kind of want to start some segments where we go over all the things that we didn't see, and this is one of the main ones. There's been a bunch of theories floating around on how he was able to pull this off for years, and we're gonna try to get down to the bottom of it. But in order to do that, we gotta examine both of their fighting styles, mostly EMIYA, to even be able to come to that conclusion. Now, we all know that the biggest wall here is Heracles' noble phantasm, God Hand, which allows him to resurrect 12 times in a row. And not only that, but it also has multiple conditions on top of that, which makes it increasingly more difficult. On top of the 12 lives, he has to be taken out with the phantasm that's at least A rank, hitting him with A rank strength, or having an A rank magic based attack. And that's just the first one. 2, he can't be taken down the same way more than once, and he builds up a resistance to any attack that he has taken. We'll go into the one that's the most obvious, and I feel like there's a caveat to this that people often misunderstand, and that is that he can't be taken down the same way twice. The implication would lead you to believe that he can't be taken down by the same phantasm twice, but that's not what it's saying at all. In fact, the fight with Salter is a great example for this. Remember, Salter only had one weapon. She was using her Excalibur Morgan the whole time. If that was really true, then she wouldn't be able to take multiple of Heracles' lives with one weapon, but just in different ways. And I know people are gonna immediately come out the woodworks to say, well, that didn't happen in the VN. Here's the thing about that. It's not that it didn't happen in the VN. We know that they fought. It's that it wasn't elaborated how they fought in the VN. It's just to say that we lack the context and the adaptations expanded upon the scene. All we knew was that Salter fought Heracles initially, she took some of his lives, and then he got possessed by the shadow. But looking at the fight that he had with Salter, we know there's a time where she straight up sliced him through the chest and ended up hitting his heart. You have the time when she hits him with an Excalibur blast, and the radiation from the blast is so strong that it just flat out incinerated his entire body. And then you have another where instead of doing the actual blast, she pulls the same technique that she used against Gil in the Fate route, where she just harnesses the energy into an attack and she chopped straight through Heracles that way. This also explains why Shiro didn't have to take so many lives when he met up with Heracles, because she had took so many already. Again, we know that Caliburn can take 7 of Heracles' lives in one strike, and Excalibur Morgan is infinitely stronger than Caliburn. So there's many different ways to get around this, just to let that be known. But the main problem is most people don't have those resources anyway. Realistically, most people can only go for his head and his heart. That's a realistic situation. You could reach and say that you could go for his vitals, his main arteries, and he bleeds out, but that's not realistically gonna happen. And we've been through this quite a bit in the Discord when we were talking about how Sasuke was able to defeat him when he fended off everybody at the gate. And I feel like it was necessary to clear all of that up to get into the more strategy side of how he was able to survive. There are multiple impressive things at work here. Like I've mentioned before, he's at a disadvantage in class. Heracles is a berserker. That's perfect for him. He's at a disadvantage in territory. He's in an enclosed area, ranging up close, and he's at a disadvantage in power. So with all these different things going on, before you even get to him taking the lives, the survival in itself is nuts. One of the champions for EMIYA, of course, is his ability to make broken phantasms. He packs magical energy into his phantasm, and it allows him to boost the rank and make it explode upon contact. When he makes his projections, since they're just imitations, the weapon is automatically degraded by a rank from the start. But with this broken phantasm, he can offset this and bring it back to its original rank. The problem with that is, in order for him to do this, he would have to be dishing out a crazy amount of magical energy, because he's summoning multiple A rank weapons, they get degraded to B rank, and then he uses his move to bring them back up to A rank. That's a lot of work before the fighting. But nevertheless, we can see that from the adaptation, this was at least a part of his game plan, as we see him opting for using his bow in some portions of the scenes. So he wasn't afraid to do it, it was just a matter of time. One of the ways that we saw EMIYA take him down that was actually shown was his overedge technique. And this was really interesting in its own right, because originally Kansho and Byakuya are only C rank weapons. So people might wonder, how was he able to do this? The initial ability of Kansho and Byakuya, at least one of them, is that it increases the rank and the noble phantasm level when they're wielded together. So right there they go from C rank to B rank. And while it's left up to speculation what changes go down in his overedge form, it's fair to say that the very fact he was able to take Heracles down means that they bump up to at least an A rank. This is likely his broken phantasm at play also. So that's one life, and really clever on his part. And another thing that Kansho and Byakuya can do is that it increases his magic and his physical resistance. So in the event that he does take a hit from Heracles, it won't be as bad just because he's wielding the swords. You got his triple crane technique that we saw Shiro use against Salter, where EMIYA uses multiple sets of his Kansho and Byakuya to trick the enemy and then appear in their blind spot and dices through them that way. This could be the life where he went for the heart. You got Nine Lives Blade Works, where EMIYA can reproduce his own version of somebody else's phantasm, with his projection of course, that even Shiro was able to use to take down Heracles. And the only reason he was able to do this is because he had EMIYA's arm. So naturally this would be available to him as well. Another thing to point out is that he's much more likely to use this because now he's more familiar with Heracles' fighting style. So this would be a life where he completely dices Heracles' body into pieces. Again, completely different kill. It had to be a tough battle for EMIYA. If you remember when Gil was fighting against him, when Gil tried to use something lower than the A rank, they bounced off his body like potato chips. They did absolutely nothing. So EMIYA couldn't even stall with the low ranking weapon. He would only be wasting his time and his energy. He had to be constantly remapping the situation with his eye of the mind. You got O Thunder Snow Shiro. Shiro was using EMIYA's card, so anything that Shiro did, EMIYA is able to produce as well. You have the bomb explosion that Shiro was able to knit with Kansho and Byakuya by weaving it into Shinji when he had his card. That's another option. Again, completely different depth. It's an explosion and technically a more spell-based attack. Now, I know a lot of people opt for the theory of him constantly using his broken phantasm, but the thing is, his broken phantasm has a lot of impact. Going back to the shot that he did in UB-Dub, where he intercepted Heracles while he was fighting against Saber. Just remember the explosion that created. They never left the Ironsburg Castle. If you remember the fight in the novel, it shows him in the castle when it started and in the castle when it finished. And the same thing happened in the adaptation. At the very best, they went outside on the castle balcony, but that's as far as that goes. So there's no way that EMIYA could realistically use his broken phantasm in the same building without harming himself. That's why it would be a bad idea. And that's why I feel like he was trying not to do that. So while using broken phantasms is a good idea physically for something like his overedge, using it for his range, especially considering how closed in he is, that's a kamikaze mission. Same thing when he was fighting against Ku in FGO. The area of effect on this attack is just too great unless he's minimizing it. Even the bomb that Shiro weaved against Shinji wasn't nearly as bad. And that's why I feel like it's much more likely that he's going for a decapitation, when he projected Calibur on the skyscraper, Fergus's phantasm. It's an A rank. Same scenes that I mentioned before. It goes down to B, he brings it back up. Many people don't know, in the anime, Heracles was nerfed. When EMIYA shot this in the anime, it made it seem as if it took one of Heracles' lives, when in the story, Heracles flat out ate this shot. So even if EMIYA boosts his phantasm back up to A rank and uses a broken phantasm, doesn't guarantee a kill. It just guarantees an opportunity for a kill. And if that wasn't bad enough, he's got to reserve his magical energy to even last the rest of the fight. In my head, he's using his independent action the same way that he used it in UB-Dub to remain to the end of the war and snipe Gil, and he still had his ties to Ren as a master. She just wasn't around on the backup. At least he had that going for him. No point of throwing Roias in because it would take way too long. So if I had to throw some scenarios out here, we got 1 life through his heart from Overedge, 1 through decapitation by him sniping, 9 lives blade works, that's 3, the mini bomb explosion, that's 4, really it's more so of an implosion, and then for the last 2 lives, we'll go for the traditional stack life takedown. One of the first weapons that come to mind that he could use to do this is Excalibur. I realize that EMIYA himself says that he can project the weapon, but it would also be a kamikaze mission, and usually it's just not worth it. I feel like this would be the same case. Now don't get me wrong, considering the type of person EMIYA is, he has no problem sacrificing himself. I mean, that's the reason that he did the fight in the first place. But if he can get out the situation, I don't feel like he would do that unless it's the final option. If he's running on his last resources and he's gonna choose between using the great bulk of his energy to project Excalibur versus him bringing out unlimited blade works, he's bringing out his reality marble all day in a battle, of course. And I feel like this is further evidenced by the fact of how the final kill against Heracles was described, how it vividly pinpoints every aspect that EMIYA had to go through to take him down one last time, and that he put his all into it. His body was dyed red and filled with holes. There's no open gaps. Both of his legs are almost melted. There's a cut on his neck. His arm is barely hanging from his elbow. He slashed his shoulder to his groin. He has a huge amount of blood gushing out of his chest, and you can literally see his internal organs blown out from the outside. And this is right before Heracles regenerates the last time. Either one of 2 things happened here. Either EMIYA used everything that he possibly had and went all out, exhausting his energy, or he flat out used unlimited blade works on the level that Shiro did in Oath Under Snow and hit him with a massive downpour of replicas. You know, I gotta opt for UB-Dub. That's the only right way for him to go out. And really, in that moment, those 2 fights parallel because Shiro lost to Angelica the same way. Shiro gave everything he had and he lost too. So it's almost the same thing. But it's not about the loss, it's about the work that they put in. It's rare that you see somebody lose and it still feels like a win, because they weren't supposed to make it that far. Heracles is a top servant. Most people will be lucky to even take a life from him, let alone half his lives from him. Getting past his god hand, you gotta deal with battle continuation and then some. And that's why when the fight was over, you got EMIYA coming out and she's furious. She's like, were you joking around? Cause he took half of your lives. Were you not fighting serious? And the monologue straight up tells us Heracles himself thinks, I don't know who that dude is, but he's really like that. Easily one of his greatest feats, easily one of the greatest moments in Stay Night. Gotta get a man his credit. The dude went in.